can get access to Slava's daughter, who was just 6 at the time. For a couple of years, if Slava and his wife needed someone to watch their kids, they would enlist Oleg every time, who was always happy to help his best friend. In September of 2021, Slava and Oleg were out drinking together, and at some point throughout the night, Oleg fell asleep. Slava then took Oleg's phone to see what he was looking at, and Slava found a very unsettling and disturbing video on his phone. He played the video and saw Oleg forcing himself on a female. Slava then made an awful discovery and realized the female victim in the video was his eldest daughter. And despite being overwhelmed by rage, Slava gave Oleg the opportunity to do one of two things. Either Oleg turned himself into the police along with all the evidence and admit to this awful crime, or Slava would take matters into his own hands. He told his former best friend that if he didn't choose the first option, he would kill him. But Oleg had other plans. Instead of turning himself in, he vanished. He ran from the village and went into hiding. Slava then went to the authorities and told them everything Oleg had done. After showing the police what he found on the phone, the police began a manhunt. The news of the crime spread like wildfire in the village, and people were extremely disgusted at what Oleg had done. And even worse, on a number of occasions, he would look after other people's children too. And many became worried that there could be more victims, and sadly, they were right. There was many more videos found on Oleg's phone which proved this wasn't his first victim. For 5 years, he would torment the young in the village and threaten them to stay quiet or else. Oleg would form relationships and friendships with people for this disgusting reason. And as I said, the police were supposed to start looking for Oleg, but after days, it came out they haven't even began searching for him yet. So Slava instead began to track him down. And after a week or so, Slava found him. What happens next is up to speculation, as some believe Slava wasn't telling the truth. Slava was able to track down Oleg and forced him into a secluded forest. It's here where Slava claims he forced Oleg to dig his own grave at knife point, and after digging the grave, Slava gave Oleg the same option again, either turn himself into the police or take his own life. After this second ultimatum, Oleg tried to rush at Slava, and according to Slava, Oleg accidentally stabbed himself in the stomach, resulting in him dying. Essentially, he ran into the knife a number of times. After this, Slava placed Oleg in the shallow grave and covered his body with dirt. He then left the forest and made his way back to the village. After some time passed, Slava turned himself in at the police station. He told them that Oleg stumbled into the knife during the scuffle outside the village in a forest. A week after Slava had seen the video, Oleg was dead. And this story about his death became big news and even spread to other countries. Many people looked at Slava as a hero, but legally he had killed someone who wasn't proven guilty yet. So Slava was arrested by the police. This had backlash, as many people didn't see Slava as a danger to the public and believed he should be released at once. Everyone was on his side. Even a former Russian presidential candidate came forward and sided with Slava. After authorities analyzed Oleg's stab wounds, it was found the injury wasn't sustained in the forest like Slava claimed, but instead at a different location. Everyone then came together to fund Slava's legal battle, saying any father would have done the same thing. And in a landmark decision, the charges against Slava would change from murder to inciting someone to take their own life. And this charge carries a way lesser sentence than murder. In 2022, Slava was found guilty and was sentenced to 18 months in a strict Russian penal colony. Even to this day, Slava remained true to the story he told police and denies killing his best friend. Slava only served 6 months of his sentence after being freed a year early. So what are your thoughts on this case? Do you think Slava was in the right doing what he did? Let me know your thoughts on this. I'm very curious to see your guys' opinions.
This horrifying video went viral after this girl ended up dead. This video is incredibly triggering and disturbing, so please be warned. On the 7th of September 2012, a video was posted online titled My Story, Struggling, Bullying, Unaliving, and blank. The girl who posted it was Amanda Michelle Todd. She was 15 years old, living in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, and I hope I've pronounced that right. Throughout the video, she tells a harrowing tale to her audience through flashcards. She states that when she was in 7th grade, which is around 12 to 13 years old, she moved in with her dad and was going online to try and make friends. She started talking to a stranger who essentially groomed her. He complimented her looks, and after around a year of doing this, he pressured her to reveal what was under her top. She had no idea he was actually screen recording. He went on to control and blackmail her by threatening to release these images. Now, he did end up exposing these images online, and police came to Amanda in 2010 to give her the news that these images were out there. She was obviously absolutely traumatized by this. She started using substances and alcohol to cope. Her family actually moved house, but unfortunately, this didn't end there. The following year, her online stalker reappeared. This time he made online social media accounts with the explicit photo and started adding her classmates as a friend. She was bullied at her new school as a result of this. She eventually had to move schools, and she really needed a friend to turn to. It was actually a guy at her school that she ended up using as a shoulder to cry on. They got close, but he then pressured her to come over to his house. The pair ended up being intimate, and it transpired that he actually had a girlfriend. A week after this happened, Amanda was confronted by a big group of people. She was screamed at and physically attacked. She returned home and attempted to unalive herself. She had to get her stomach pumped and was then sent back to school, but unfortunately, her doing this actually just increased the bullying. It wasn't enough to get the trolls to leave her alone. She was taunted by her classmates, and in March 2012, the family had to move once again. The same exact routine then continued. The stalker would create new accounts when she went to a new school. He would then add her classmates and even her teachers and the parents of the kids. They would all end up seeing the explicit photos of the child, and it would cause her just more trauma. Her mental health continued to plummet, and despite getting counseling, she once again attempted to unalive herself. In the video that she ultimately posted online, she held up a card stating, "I have nobody, I need someone," and a sad face. On the 10th of October 2012, her body was found at her home. Amanda unfortunately could see no way out. Dutch police eventually came forward to state that they had arrested a man after finding chilling chat logs involving extortion. He was 35-year-old Aydin Koban. Now, he was charged with multiple serious offences, including SA, child SA material, and extortion. There were a staggering 39 alleged victims. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced to just 6 years in prison for causing Amanda's death. He will then serve an 11-year prison sentence for convictions relating to 33 other victims.
The Haiti orphan smuggling case is a really bizarre one, so let's talk about it. On January 12, 2010, a massive earthquake hit Haiti. Thousands died, thousands were left without their homes, and after hearing about this earthquake, a group of 10 American Baptist missionaries from Idaho set off to head down there. So this group was associated with something called the New Life Children's Refuge. It was a group dedicated to finding homes for orphans. Now, after the earthquake, the New Life Children's Refuge leased a hotel in the Dominican Republic, where they intended on bringing orphans, according to their mission statement. So these missionaries flew to Haiti on January 22nd, and on January 26th, they had gathered a group of 40 children and they headed for the Dominican Republic. However, when they tried to cross the border, the missionaries were arrested. As it turns out, they didn't have the proper paperwork, and they had literally just been attempting to steal these children from their home country. This is really interesting now. These missionaries claim that all of these children were orphans. They had asked these kids if they had parents, where they had come from, and apparently they had all told them they're orphans. But when the kids were questioned at the border, it turned out that almost none of them were orphans. They all had families, they didn't know who these people were, and they had literally been taken. According to these children's parents and relatives, the missionaries had told them that after the earthquake relief efforts were through, they could come back and get their kids and bring them home. However, WikiLeaks leaked some documents relating to this, which clearly showed that the missionaries' mission statement was adoption. So they were planning on giving these kids away or rehoming them. But here's where things get incredibly weird. So in the days following the group's arrest, a man named Jorge Puelo came forward and stated he was representing some of the missionaries. Jorge claimed that he was a lawyer, but it was later found out he's not a lawyer. And Jorge later admitted that at the time he was being questioned and investigated for participating in sex trafficking in El Salvador. He was also wanted for smuggling people across the US-Canadian border. Eventually, Jorge served time in Canada and the United States, and it's still really unclear what his whole deal with these missionaries was. So this is already bizarre, right? Like, what were these missionaries doing? They were trying to literally kidnap these children out of the country. They told the parents that they were going to bring them back, but clearly they stated they wanted to have them adopted. They lied about certain things. They lied about the kids being orphans, and they clearly just weren't being truthful. Well, things got even weirder when Bill Clinton inserted himself into the case. With everything going on at the time, he stated that they needed to find a solution to this quickly because all those missionaries had been charged with kidnapping. Keep in mind, they had attempted to, according to the law, kidnap 33 children. Now, eventually, most of these people were freed and sent back to the United States, never served any time for any of this weird behavior. One woman named Laura Silsby got 6 months in prison there, but she was found guilty, sentenced to her time that had already been served, and she was let go. This is a really weird case. What do you guys think about all this? I know WikiLeaks inserted itself and leaked some documents because they believed that there was something weird going on here, but I just don't really know what it is, and I only like to make assertions if I have evidence. I am curious to hear your thoughts, though, in the comment section because this is just really a strange story.
Imagine your brother-in-law dying under suspicious circumstances, but you can't trust the police to investigate. The victim's family are rich, powerful, and virtually run the entire island. You have no choice but to turn to a former NYPD detective who is now working as a private investigator. The key to most murder cases is the motive, but finding it won't be that simple. Killer Heat is a brand new red-hot thriller out now on Prime Video. Joseph Gordon-Levitt stars as private investigator Nick Barley. He ends up entwined in a world of deceit, lies, and mystery. But will he be able to uncover the truth, or will he be left to face his own mistakes and dark past? Now streaming on Prime Video.
Hammer coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
This man was going to plant flowers and grow food with this man's body. On December 24th, 2019 in Michigan, a 25-year-old man named Kevin Bacon was talking to another man on the dating app Grindr.
This game
you have to take a certain amount, like a dozen or more, to hallucinate. I don't recommend anybody to, like, obviously go do it. I'm not saying to go do it, but I'm just saying, like, people that would hallucinate on Benadryl, it would be bad trips overall. Like, they would see spiders, they would see snakes, wasps attacking them. They would hear like familiar voices and unfamiliar voices talking to them, and they would see shadowy figures, and they will also see the Hat Man. Have you ever heard about the Hat Man?
The Hat Man, no.
It's a sleep paralysis demon. So people around the world have seen this mother for like years, bro. Websites dedicated to this, like people talking about their stories, stuff like that. Everybody with this. He wears a fedora. You can't really see his face, only like two red eyes, and it's always like he's a shadowy figure.
And I remember a supporter actually talking about how they had sleep paralysis and they saw, saw a man with a hat outside of the window, bro. Keep in mind the window is like mad fucking tall.
So I do remember seeing a story about a therapist who had like a patient, and he would always say that he would.
This Loki made me even more scared because he was just talking about like a shadow person holding up the fucking car.
This man was killed by an atomic wedgie. Denver St. Clair and his stepson, Bradley Davis, had a strained relationship, and what started as a tense family argument spiraled into a gruesome and unexpected act of violence. That night, tempers flared, and a verbal fight quickly turned physical. In a fit of rage, Brad attacked Denver with what he called an atomic wedgie, a prank turned horrifyingly lethal. He pulled Denver's underwear over his head with such force that the waistband wrapped tightly around his neck. The elastic waistband compressed Denver's airway, causing him to suffocate. When police arrived, they found a scene straight out of a nightmare. Denver's lifeless body, with his underwear still wrapped around his throat. Brad Lee Davis initially claimed it was an accident, but investigators were not convinced. The evidence pointed to a brutal and deliberate attack. The coroner confirmed the cause of death, asphyxiation due to the pressure on his neck. The force was so severe it left bruising and deep marks, a haunting reminder of an act that was both violent and humiliating. Brad Lee pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter, admitting he attacked Denver out of rage. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison for this awful crime.
The man you just saw in that video's name is Ricardo Lopez, but he's better known online as the Bjork Stalker. If you don't know, Bjork is an Icelandic singer. She's a pop star from her home country, and she's famous worldwide. But in the 1990s, a man from Georgia in the United States took an interest in Bjork and began planning a dark attack. At first, he started gathering information about Bjork, sending her fan letters, and he wrote all these delusions down in a journal. And as he continued writing in this journal, his thoughts descended into pure madness. Ricardo began expressing frustrations about his career as an exterminator. He ranted about how he couldn't get a girlfriend, discussed his feelings of inadequacy due to being overweight, and in the journal he made 408 references to Bjork, 34 references to unaliving himself, and 14 references to murder. In 1996, Ricardo saw that Bjork was in a new relationship with a new man, and he felt betrayed and decided he was going to kill her. At first, he planned on mailing her a bomb full of needles with HIV blood, but he decided that would be too hard, and he instead decided on a letter bomb filled with acid, hoping that it would either disfigure her or kill her, and that afterwards he'd take his own life and then they'd be reunited in heaven. So he constructed the bomb, mailed it off, then returned back to his house, painted his face red and green, and he then took his own life. After Ricardo's body was discovered, authorities intercepted the bomb package, and the package itself never even close to Bjork. But this is truly just another story of stalking and obsession that really disturbs me. Stalking is such a major problem in the United States, and we do not have adequate enough laws to stop these sorts of things from happening. And the footage that Ricardo recorded on his camcorder detailing his whole journey is some of the most disturbing stuff you can possibly view.
Little girl vanished, and her chilling final phone call is absolutely terrifying. Her presumed fate is like something from a nightmare. It was the 6th of April, 1986 in New Mexico when a small town was shocked by some horrifying news. 9-year-old Antoinette Cayedido had vanished in the middle of the night. Her mum was devastated to find that at 7 a.m. when she went into her bedroom, she was nowhere to be found. The little girl was actually always really responsible, and she was said to be very wise beyond her years, so there's no way she would just vanish on her own accord. Her mum, Penny, frantically ran round neighbours' houses asking if they'd heard anything or seen the little girl. When she had no luck, police were alerted. They scoured the area too and could find absolutely nothing. Straight away, investigators knew this screamed of a kidnap. Penny told officers that a local man named Emiliano Gardella, nicknamed Emo, had given the little girl flowers 3 times up until she vanished. He was questioned but denied any involvement. A man named Ron Perry, who knew the little girl's mum, Penny, told police that around the door of the family home and on a bedroom window. He said that he did this because he and Penny had had an argument and he wanted to just check on her and make sure she was okay. He said that he then left and spent the night at a friend's house who lived down the street, and the friend actually corroborated this story. Months went by and Antoinette's heartbroken family had to go on with absolutely no idea of what had happened to her. Finally, when all seemed lost and a year had gone by, police received a very chaotic phone call. A child was on the other end of the line claiming to be the missing girl. She said that she was in Albuquerque, but before police could get any more information, they heard a man shouting at her and the line suddenly went dead. Officers played Penny the recording, and she stated, "I listened to that tape over and over and over, and just by the way she says her last name and the way she screamed sent chills all over my body. A mother knows, and I know that was her." Then 4 years later, there was a possible sighting of the little girl in Nevada. A waitress had been waiting on a table of a scruffy couple with a young girl. The waitress said that the little girl had strangely kind of dropped a utensil on the floor, and it seemed to have been done on purpose, but she didn't think too much of it until the little girl actually put her hand on the waitress's hand. Again, she kind of didn't think too much of it and just went into the back. Then after the 3 of them had left the restaurant, the waitress went over to clear the table and found a note. It said, "Please help me, call the police." Obviously, by that point, the 3 had gone. Then years later, one of Antoinette's sisters was interviewed, and she actually said that she'd witnessed her getting abducted. She hadn't initially been interviewed because she was only 5 years old at the time. Two men had apparently forced Antoinette into a brown van, and because this little girl was only small at the time, she said that she didn't tell anyone about this because she didn't want to upset her mum. Then the mum Penny's story changed dramatically. She admitted to having heard a knock at the door and having told Antoinette to go and answer it, and then said that about half an hour passed and she realized Antoinette hadn't come back. This was very different to her original story, which was that she just found in the morning around 7 a.m. that Antoinette wasn't there. She never said anything about making the little girl in the middle of the night go and answer the door. She then also said something extremely incriminating to the FBI. She said, "What if me and Emo did this? Would we both go to prison?" She apparently admitted to knowing who was going to come and take her daughter, as well as having kind of planned it and having told her to open the door, like I said. Despite this, she was never charged and she passed away.
So you think you know wigs, but do you really? First up, we've got shape video masks. You can use different shapes to create completely.
So I remember seeing another video from 2017 in Jalisco of a Jesus Christ statue moving in the middle of La Misa. Saw it? It's quick, it's in the beginning. Oh yeah. So I mean, like I said, I don't know how people want to take that kind of like a miracle in a way.
Yeah.
Or other people, say it's like supernatural, creepy thing. It is paranormal though.
Of course, yeah.
At the end of the day, bro, because if you see a statue or anything that's not human move, it gives you a little bit like of a
catches you off guard.
But what it reminded me of was a movie.
Oh, okay.
It's a very, very old movie. It's a vintage movie that I watched as a kid. It's called Marcelino Pan y Vino.
I've never seen that.
So what the movie is basic about is this little boy, he's an orphan. His name is Marcelino, right? He gets taken into this monastery with all the Catholic and religious monks. And obviously he's a kid, bro. So very mischievous. And one day he sneaks into the attic of the monastery.
Okay.
And he sees a giant crucifix of Jesus. And he starts talking to the statue. And eventually, over time of the movie, the statue starts talking back to him.
What the fuck?
Having regular conversation with him, saying like you shouldn't be bad and stuff. At the end of the movie,
there was a famous author named David, and he wrote multiple best-selling horror novels. He was praised for plot twists and surprise endings. He received large amounts of fan mail every single day, and many other authors sent him manuscripts in hopes that they would get their work published. But David took pleasure in stealing the ideas from amateur writers. If he came across a manuscript with a great idea for a story, he would use it in his own books and deny the author any credit. One day, David got a manuscript, and as he read the first chapter, he felt he knew how it was going to end. He continued reading, and as he got to the last chapter, he noticed the pages were stuck together. And anxious to finish the story, he pulled the pages apart. David felt increasingly tired, but still wanted to finish the story. When David finished, the ending was exactly what he thought. He then made a mental note to steal the story. But suddenly, David noticed a note from the author saying this: "I knew you were going to steal this story. You did it to me before and blacklisted me from the whole industry and ruined my career and life. And now I'm going to get my revenge." You had to pull the pages apart to read, didn't you? Are you feeling tired? That's normal. It's one of the symptoms of arsenic poisoning. Soon your heartbeat will get slower and slower until it stops forever. Goodbye, David. Some twist endings can be very hard to predict.
Why? Dad, she's just a kid. She's 12. Do you know what people would say if they saw me skating with a 12-year-old? They'd say I was robbing the cradle. That girl is gorgeous. She's beautiful.
When I first saw this clip circulating on social media, I just couldn't believe it. Here you have a man who's now known to be one of the most prolific sexual predators in Hollywood, discussing what seems to be a how-to guide on how to groom a child on national television. I know that people are going to say, oh, it was a different time and blah, blah, blah. This was more acceptable. But I don't think that this ever should have been acceptable. I mean, I can't remember a single television show that I watched that had any sort of content that reflected a value like the one that's being presented here in this clip, especially coming from the mouth of a guy like Bill Cosby. It's kind of like Jeffrey Epstein giving you dating advice. But I'm just going to play the rest of the clip for you now. This is just really disturbing.
Why? She's a kid. She's 12. Do you know what people say if they saw me skating with a 12-year-old? Cradle. That girl is gorgeous. She's beautiful. I'm sorry. All I see is 12. There's a certain age that to me, Dad, I'm going to party, and then when I'm burned out, I'm going to look around for a woman to settle down with. Remember? What age is that? 24. When you're 24, she will be around 20 or 21. And you're going to be looking around for somebody. Now, wouldn't it be nice to lay a little track and be nice to her so that she would be 24? All right, Dad. I mean, I'll do it. Only because it's your birthday. Thank you. If she turns out to be as beautiful as you say she will be, you have to find her and bring her to my party. All right.
This woman held a farewell death party for her boyfriend prior to killing him. He sat there happily throughout the entire night, having no idea that that was the intention of the party. It was October 1995, and Joe Chinque was living in Australia. He'd grown up in Newcastle, had a younger brother, and the family were all super close. Now, Joe was extremely good-looking, charismatic, he was sporty, he had everything going for him. He went to uni, and then, as lots of people did, he went travelling afterwards. After coming back, he was on a night out with his friends, and he bumped into a girl that he liked the look of. This was Anu Singh. The pair were really attractive and seemed to be quite well suited. Anu was from a really good family background, and so was Joe. The pair got into a relationship, and this wasn't Anu's first relationship. She'd actually dated a guy called Simon Walsh, and the pair had got pregnant. The pair decided to get rid of the pregnancy, which was particularly difficult on Anu. She ended up getting into some pretty hard substances in order to cope. It was around this point where she met Joe and got into a relationship with him. And you might be thinking that I've missed out a whole bunch of information about when Simon and Anu broke up, but the reality is they didn't. There was a definite crossover between Simon and Anu's relationship and Anu's and Joe's relationship. It wasn't until Simon found out that Anu was cheating on him that he broke it off with her, and she sort of fully focused all her attention on Joe. This obviously wasn't the best start to a relationship, and Joe's parents really didn't like Anu. She was very controlling, and Joe seemed to really change sort of personality once he was in this relationship with her. She was getting more and more demanding of Joe and more controlling. The pair, though, did end up moving in together in Canberra, much to Joe's family's upset. They were even saving up to get married. Now, Anu was struggling with an ED at this point and was getting really sort of obsessed with going to the gym and taking certain kind of substances to help her lose weight. Things would get so bad that she ended up being involved with the local crisis team at some occasions just due to how bad her mental health was, but she was really reluctant to engage with the services. She ended up actually blaming Joe for her struggles, which was really strange because everybody around them could see that Joe had done nothing but stand by her the whole time and support her. She then started expressing really concerning desires to hurt people around her. Now, this included Joe and her ex, Simon, as well as herself. She told multiple of her friends about these plans and wishes to hurt other people, but they didn't seem to actually do anything or reach out for any kind of help for her. Now, this was obviously not just a one-off kind of joke that she'd made, because weeks later she was still saying this and also was asking friends if they could get her a gun so that she could unalive herself. The one friend in question apparently thought she was just joking. Then the plan changed. She decided to, instead of unalive herself with a gun, she wanted to use an HOD. Now, it's not clear whether she came up with this plan by herself or she had somebody advising her. In August 1997, it's believed that Anu had started asking a known substance user how she would OD someone with H. She then bought some H off this guy and told him that she was going to unalive somebody else and herself with it. It's alleged that Anu's friend, Madhavi Rao, knew all about this and even helped her to get hold of some other substances to effectively sedate Joe. That's when, in October 97, Anu decided to host a farewell party for her and Joe. However, she didn't tell Joe the real reason for holding this party. She just told all of the other people that they invited. She allegedly invited Madhavi and some other friends who allegedly also all knew the plan, but were kind of told to stay quiet about it, and they didn't really know if it was a joke or not. Once the guests had left, Anu crushed up a tablet into Joe's drink to knock him out. She then went to get the syringe to complete the task, but the H had congealed in the syringe, so she wasn't able to go ahead with it. Following this first failed attempt, Joe had no idea what had gone on and how close he came to death. Anu then scheduled another dinner party just days later. She tried to put the same plan in motion, but again, she failed. And then on the morning of the 26th of October, on the third attempt at killing her boyfriend, after Anu bought even more substances to use, Joe lay unconscious in their home. Anu rang her friend in a bit of a panic and asked her what to do, and she said to ring the ambulance. In an infuriating 911 call, she told the operator that there was somebody there that was potentially experiencing an OD and that he was vomiting blood. She wouldn't tell them what the address was, and frustratingly, the operator had to keep asking her, just tell me what the address is. She kept asking the operator if he was going to be okay. Well, no, he's not going to be if you don't tell them the address. She admitted to police administering the substances, and she was reportedly hysterical when they arrived. She was charged with murder, but tried to claim that she wanted to unalive herself and wanted to incapacitate Joe so that he wouldn't stop her. Anu was eventually found guilty of manslaughter, and she served only 4 years of a 10-year sentence.